All right, welcome back. It is 5:37. My name is Jim Murphy, and you are listening to the Jim Murphy Radio Show. And if it is 5:30 on Tuesday, it must be time to talk to Krista Jackson. Krista is a licensed clinical professional counselor and a psychologist, and we will start our psychology segment. Hey, Krista.
Hey, Jim. How are you doing?
Good. How you doing today?
Doing okay.
Okay. Now, we talked briefly, and you said that today you want to talk about the timeline of pathology. What is that about?
Yeah, I just wanted to give everyone kind of an idea of, how mental illness kind of functions, and that pretty much we're all somewhere in the middle of something or in the midst of something. And the first thing that we need to understand is that the things that cause mental illness, there are two factors that cause mental illness. The first is stress, and that's the first milestone that we're going to talk about tonight.
Okay.
And the second is time.
Okay.
So given enough time and enough stress, we all could become severely mentally ill, in fact. We all have the potential. So we're no different than someone who is schizophrenic or someone who is psychotic. The only difference is that we haven't been subjected to the same amount of time and stress.
Oh, okay.
And actually studies show this out because, that's one of the techniques used in interrogation. They know that, when you're interrogating somebody, an individual, if you put them under enough stress for a long enough period of time, they will eventually, quote unquote, break or talk or whatever.
They will crack.
So,
yeah.
and that's really where we all are. We're all somewhere on that timeline. So it's a good thing when I work with clients to explain that, because it really does equalize everybody, and it makes everyone feel like we're all somewhere in there, and it's just, how much time, how much stress have you had for how long is
Right.
really what makes the difference.
Right. And I've thought about that where I can relate to that as far as stress in the past would be, say, like with a certain employment situations, or just a kind of a bad job or something like that, where a place that you just kind of can't get out of, and it just over time, the longer time that you try to get out of it, it just kind of really wears on you. So that's where I can relate to something like that.
And that's a horrible stressor because of the fact that you might have other people counting on your income. You might be the person where you have everyone has their insurance through. That's a tremendous amount of stress. Absolutely.
Right. And that's where I can think in my life where something like that, I'm trying to work for having more control over a situation like that. It seems like that's where stress comes in for me, is when you just don't have control of a situation, and having a job like that or something that you don't like is certainly something that can cause that.
Well, absolutely, and kind of that's a great segue. Stress actually has two variables to it. We have what's called positive stress, and there's actually a name for that called eustress. And then we have what's called negative stress, and that's distress.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So a stressor, by definition, is just anything that's forcing you to adapt. Okay? So it's forced adaptation. It's basically when you must adapt, okay? So in a negative stressor situation, it's going to make you feel overwhelmed, perhaps vulnerable. In a positive situation, it might make you feel knowledgeable, empowered. And we have to remember that stress is very, very unique to the individual. The same situation for one person could be eustress, and for another person could be distress.
Okay.
And I always use the example of pregnancy. For a couple that's trying to become pregnant and has tried for some time, a pregnancy is eustress. It's fabulous. It's wonderful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And versus for a couple that has an unplanned pregnancy, the very same situation is going to cause a lot of distress.
Right.
So it's very situational and up to interpretation to the individual. And the stressor itself is not the key. It's how we as an individual react and adapt to the stressor.
Right.
And that's where the psychological components come in. This is where you need to have your coping skills on board. And this is where you need to be really, really, really good about utilizing your coping skills, your adaptive coping skills, that is. Those are the things that help you adapt to the situation, but in a healthy way. We want to stay away from those maladaptive coping skills, such as alcohol, drugs, sex, violence. Those are not the ones we want to do.
The bears.
Want to stay? Yes. Want to stay away from those.
Right,
oh, I know.
right.
I think that game on Sunday caused a lot of people distress. Well, if you were a Bears fan, at least.
Absolutely.
Caused a lot of people distress, and it is. It's something that when you see something over time, and as you saw, as the game went longer and longer and longer, people's stress levels increased and increased and increased.
Right. And I've thought of that too in as far as coping skills, and maybe I haven't identified it when it's happening, but I've tried to identify certain situations where if I don't think I have control over the situation, is just try to step back from it and just see what you're doing wrong, or just try to cope with it by just kind of just taking back and just looking at the situation and things like that. That's what I do to try to cope.
Absolutely. And that's when you need to bring in your resources and you need to bring in your support systems. When your stress management system is starting to fail you, or when it's starting to get shaky, that's when you need to bring in those support services. And if it does fail you, that's when you need to call professional help.
Right.
Because that's what we do. We can help you before you. Next week we'll talk about the next step on the timeline. Before you make it to the next step, we can help you make sure that you have some adaptive coping strategies and stop you from going down to the next step. And that's the key. The stress isn't going to stop. We are going to be forced to adapt every day of our life. The stress will not stop. There's the old saying, you can stop adapting when you're dead.
Right.
And that's really true. We have to adapt from the minute we're born till the minute we die. So that part of the equation we can't do anything about. But how we deal, cope, and react and manage it, that's what we can do. And we want to stay as low or as kind of far down on the bottom of the timeline as we can, because that's the healthy side of it. So, making sure that you do those things that are healthy for you and adaptive for you. Utilize your friends, utilize your social networks, and if you feel yourself still experiencing difficulty, then reach out and get some professional help.
Okay, sounds good. Very good advice. So.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Well, once again, thank you very much for joining me today. And if you want to get in touch with Krista, the two ways of doing it, if you want to send her an email. Her address is Krista, KRISTAAM Jackson @yahoo.com. And also you can contact her through Harper College through the main number, which is 847-925-6000. Just ask for the psychology department and Krista. I got them both. I got them both.
You got it. You can get it. And I'll also offer my services to any of the Bears players. So.
Oh, boy.
Because I bet you right now they're under a lot of distress.
Yeah, they are. Just watching it, they seem to be pretty good about it. Most of it was talking about defending Jay Cutler and all that kind of stuff. But I think it was the fans. And, I talked about it earlier. If you were listening, I went on and on and on and on. But it just seems like, it was such a build-up to it. Like it was going to be the biggest game. It was, it was. Everything on paper was the biggest deal because they've never met like this for the Super Bowl. And it just wasn't much of a game. It really wasn't.
Well, actually, and that's a great, that shows where, for the two quarterbacks, the situation caused a lot of distress. But take a look at the young guy who stepped in. Man, that was eustress for him. He was in a stressful situation, but it was positive, and he really adapted very quickly to the situation and made it such a positive for his life and his career.
Yeah.
Way to go, adaptive coping all the way.
Yeah, so. And then. Yeah, and he just, he handled it real well. He didn't seem to be, it didn't seem to bother him. And when he talked about it afterwards, it just seemed like, he handled it like that's, it is. That's just part of the job, that he'll just step in like that. They prepare him that way. But yeah, and then, the other thing was with the second guy, with Todd Collins.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've also heard later, too, I heard a report that they said that he was injured, the reason they took him out, but it didn't seem like that. It seemed like he just wasn't getting it done, and that's why they pulled him out. Right. So that's another thing with this game, is just, it seems like, too, there was so much misinformation about what was going on,
Yeah.
that added to it.
And you know what, and he may have been injured. Actually, one of my very, very good friends, her husband is actually on the Vikings.
Oh.
And, so I kind of have and to hear from the inside of how all this works, a lot of times there are other reasons that nobody knows about, like injuries that they don't want to publicize and stuff like that. But yeah, there's he handled, what's his name again? The young guy?
The guy that came in?
Yeah. Haney, thank you, Haney. Yeah, he handled it. That's how you handle stress. He's a great example of how you step in, talk about such a high pressure situation, high stress situation, and that's how you handle the stress. And he did. He coped with it. He dealt with it. He was forced to adapt, and he did a great job. Yeah. So, as I told you earlier before we were talking the show, if they only would have started with him.
Oh yeah. And with
that game would have been over by halftime.
Yeah, and with Jay too, it didn't start off well because it seemed like the Packers were just going at will up the field there, just completely uncontested. And then when he came in, he didn't answer. Well, the team, but they put a lot of pressure on him, but it just seemed like he didn't have an answer for it. And when it was the first two series where they didn't really do anything or equal to what the Packers were doing, it was like, this is going to be a long day. So
it's not going to be a good day at Soldier Field, no.
So.
but a chance to adapt, to cope, and to move on. So
absolutely.
Looking forward, right?
That's what I'm doing. I'm just going to move on. Of course, I can't root for the Packers in the Super Bowl, but I congratulate them on winning and going to the Super Bowl. They beat us, congratulations and kudos to them.
If anyone else should, I have to say it's probably the best, representation. If anyone besides the Bears should go.
Right. So, and they've been, they have been playing really well lately, so they are going to give Pittsburgh a really good game. And as far as the game, it's going to be a great game. I'm pretty sure it is. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And hey, go Midwest.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for the psychology. Hey, and sports talk.
And sports talk. Hey, anytime. Yeah, we are definitely fans. Hockey and football in my house, though.
Very good.
Definitely fans.
All right. Well, thanks again, Chris. I'll let you go, and we'll talk again next week.
Thanks, Jim.
All right. We'll see you.
Always a pleasure.
Okay. Bye. All right, that was Krista Jackson. She is a licensed clinical professional counselor and a psychologist, and that was our psychology and, like I said, / sports talk for this week. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I will be right back right after this.